Close to 400,000 people have been killed in the civil war in South Sudan, half through violence, making the conflict among the worst the world has seen in recent years, according to a new analysis by researchers at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. The researchers hope the new analysis, which far surpasses earlier death toll estimates, will reveal the terrible human cost of the war and give a renewed impetus to peace talks and humanitarian funding. Here's Henry Ridgewell.
The South Sudan civil war erupted in 2013 as rebels took up arms against the government. A peace agreement signed 2 years later broke down and the conflict spread. Fighting has continued despite another ceasefire deal signed last month. It has taken a devastating human toll. Researchers say the war has led to nearly 400,000 deaths, with around half of those attributable directly to violence, mostly adult males.
We were surprised at the extent of violence, so at the proportion of deaths that were actually due to people getting killed. I think this places South Sudan more broadly on par with the likes of Syria and Iraq, as opposed to other sub-Saharan African conflicts that we've seen in the past.
The analysis, led by Professor Githui, was funded by the United States Institute of Peace. Researchers used census projections to estimate population figures alongside mortality data from household surveys. They also captured data on various predictors of mortality, such as conflict intensity, displacement, and food security. A statistical model was then used to estimate the death toll attributable to the war, covering not only violent deaths, but also those caused by a lack of healthcare, food shortages, or disease, the indirect consequences of the conflict.
They have actually been shown in many different armed conflicts to be sometimes the majority of deaths attributable to the crisis.
The researchers say their findings underscore the urgency of resolving the conflict. They also hope the analysis can inform the humanitarian response in South Sudan, one of the largest worldwide. Its total funding requirement in 2018 is $1.7 billion, still only half funded, according to the United Nations.
I'm hoping that by putting fairly concrete, objective, hopefully scientifically credible numbers around some crude metric of the level of suffering and impact that these crises have on people, we're actually going to be able to influence that broad global commitment to humanitarian financing.
Githui now hopes to apply the statistical technique to other African conflicts, starting with Nigeria and the war against Boko Haram Islamist militants. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Staying in South Sudan, where citizens of Africa's youngest nation are still waiting to experience a lasting peace that will see an end to 5-year civil war despite a recently signed and revitalized peace deal between warring parties. The war broke out in 2013 when troops loyal to the then Vice President Riek Machar clashed with forces loyal to President Salva Kiir. The conflict has since uprooted 25% of the country's 12 million people and devastated the economy. On Sunday, about 200 armed prisoners staged a protest in an 8-hour standoff demanding legal access. Most of them are political detainees who have been incarcerated for years as prisoners at the National Security Headquarters prison, known locally as the Blue House. The detainees want President Salva Kiir to honor a promise he made in September to release all political prisoners. Now, for more on the politics in South Sudan, I'm joined by Stephen Parr, the SPLM-IO's chairman for Foreign Relations Committee. Stephen, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much, Esther.
Start us off by telling us what stands in the way of implementing a lasting peace for South Sudan.
It is simply lack of political will on the part of President Salva Kiir. We have signed a number of agreements with him. The ARCIS we are revitalizing is an agreement he violated totally in July 2016. He attempted assassination on our chairman, Dr. Riek Machar. Then people went back to war. We have signed a number of agreements since December last year. None of them has been implemented, and the government is still on the offensive even today. Until this morning, they attacked our position.
Listening to you, it tells me that this revitalized peace deal is nowhere near implementation.
No, we have implemented our part as opposition, but the government has not honored even a single promise that that's made so far.
What do you say to critics who say that both you, the opposition, and the government of the day benefits from this civil war, that you actually don't want to see any peace in South Sudan?
Yes, I can see an element of ignorance in that thing. All the people of South Sudan today need peace. And nobody is actually benefiting from the war except those who are now controlling the oil money in Juba. We are not part of it, and it doesn't make sense to blame everybody for looting the resources of the people of South Sudan.
You know, I say this, Stephen, with respect. When I look at you, I see a healthy, strong man.
Yes.
Well-dressed, well-educated, well-fed. What comes to mind when you see fellow South Sudanese citizens in grinding poverty, children who have no hope for tomorrow? What comes to your mind? What do you see about the future of your
Well, you know, it is not about people dressing up like this and assuming that I'm part of those people looting resources of South Sudan because I dress up like this and I look this healthy is a prejudice. I used to work here in the United States. I went to school here. Yes, I'm educated.
It's not so much about you.
Okay.
I'm looking at a whole population of people. There are even investigative reports indicating that both the opposition and the government officials, most of them live very well. In fact, most of them also live in other neighboring countries. They are well protected. They conduct their affairs like nothing is happening back home.
By the way, the SPLM-IO has been isolated since July 2016. We don't live like the government. It is a prejudice. When we dress up like this, we just want to stand our ground. We own nothing in that region.
What do you say?
We are actually living in destitute.
You're living like destitute. Well, what do you say to some of your own citizens who say, we would rather have stayed in Sudan rather than secede and come to a country which we would have embraced as our own, only to have chaos upon chaos?
It is changed on the leadership. But let me tell you one thing. There is only one person who has become obstacles to development, to peace in the country. And that is that dictator we call Salva Kiir. There's nothing wrong with the people of South Sudan. We don't regret becoming independent because we all fought for that. There is nothing wrong with the people of South Sudan. There is nothing wrong with the country. Our independence is a right of our people. They earned through ballot, through referendum. Our problem is a leadership crisis in the person of Salva Kiir Mayardit.
So, as opposition, because everything you say, you blame the government. What are you doing as opposition? How do you even come together to say, you know what, we've had enough, this is what we need to do?
We have done it so many times. You know, in 2015, we went in to implement the agreement we signed. As we speak, we have also implemented our parts of the agreement. It is a government which is still on the offensive. It is the government that has kept POWs. It is the government which is continuing to detain political opposition everywhere in the country. Our comrades, our friends who have been abducted in Kenya are still under detention in that blue house you talked about. So who is the obstacle to peace now?
The Blue House is
not the opposition.
The Blue House is in Juba.
In Juba, and ghost houses. And ghost houses.
But you know, what do you tell the people you're talking about? You say you live like destitutes, surely. You live like destitutes.
Do you know where I live now? I'm just polluting.
Just tell me about the people
you will not find any homes I have in the world today.
Tell me about the people that I see who have no food on the table. Children have no clothes to wear. They have no hope.
It is unfortunate.
What is the future
and that is why we want peace in our country. Dr. Riek Machar has been writing to the whole world to come back to peace and revitalize the agreement. We have done it. We are doing our part. The government is not doing its part. And actually, that's the problem. Our people today are displaced even in their hometowns. They are being protected by the international community from their own government. In Juba, in Wau, in Bentiu. Who is displacing our people? The government of the day, not us. We are also displaced just like our people
but to the
around the country.
To the neighboring countries and IGAD who share this burden, and they probably feel they're tired of babysitting South Sudan.
The IGAD should also be challenged. There are guarantors of these agreements, Sudan and Uganda, who are not actually doing their part to tell Kir to respect the agreements. And actually, that is a critical issue now.
Stephen, I would love to have you come back on the show to tell us we have implemented the peace deal. The country is moving forward.
The evidence are there. When we release POWs and stranded families, they were verified by International Red Cross Committee. We have done our part, and we are now fighting only in self-defense. We are being attacked. We are being detained. And we are the oppressors of South Sudan as we speak now, as opposition.
We hope we can get
the oppressor is the government.
We hope to get a government official to state their side of the story. But all the East Africans want to see and all the South Sudanese want to see is peace implemented and the country living together. Stability.
We are for peace and our people know this. We are victims of this war.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen, thank you. Stephen Parr is SPLM-IO's chairman for Foreign Relations Committee.